Andy Edwards. Never heard of him.
Let music into your home. With our personalised online music lessons, you can learn from the safety and comfort of your own home.
On the MA Performance Arts course, we get the opportunity to study interdisciplinary performance in one of the best music conservatoire departments in the United Kingdom.
Okay, there's a guitar pick, and you pluck along with me, okay? If you can.
Another guy that I've worked so closely with over the years, it's been an absolute pleasure working with him. Tonight he's been doing the live stream and he's had to sort of work all this out in the last couple of days. We've live streamed this multi-cameras, first time we've done it, so I'd like a big round of applause for everything he's done this year, for these students, for me. Rob Roberts, here he is. On the course, they've actually been in bands and been on top of the pops and have sold records, and I think we need to mention them. So from Populating itself at the back there, Richard March, give me a round of applause. And last but not least, I want to bring to the stage, going to say a few words from Ned's Atomic Dustbin, John Penny, everybody!
Yes.
You can tell by... can't speak today. You can tell by my pose that I'm in thought, which means it must be Philosophy Sunday. Yes, it is. You are right. Doesn't mean it's Sunday where you are, and it doesn't mean it's Sunday where I am. Philosophy Sunday is a state of mind, and it's where we have a bit of a think. Let the mind wander, right? Get outside the normal remit of this channel, just talking about the 10 things I love or 10 things I hate. And, maybe, grapple with some subjects which are close to my heart, maybe close to your heart. Because music for me, it's the most important thing in my life. Equal to my family and kids. It's something that I've never got away from, that I've never become tired of. And it's a thing that has created the sort of shape of my life, really. I can't remember any time in my life where I wasn't absolutely fascinated by music. And I'm sure you lot watching this channel share the same thing. And that's what binds us together. And I hope whatever I do, however silly it is or surreal or serious or whatever it is, underlying it is a real passion for music. And if I can make you feel that, right, maybe you've got a bit fed up, you're getting a bit old, a bit past it, putting on your records and you're not feeling it anymore. You try to listen to new music and you're just not feeling it. And then I come on and I give you a little bit of passion, and the passion comes back. That's what it's all about, motivation, passion. And you go, oh yeah, Andy's reminding me what I liked about music. And maybe that's the service I provide. That doesn't mean I can do it to myself. And it might be that I turn up here and do the job. Let's get them all worked up. Let's get them all excited about music again. But in reality, I suffer with the same thing, you see. Who am I to lecture anybody? Especially someone who, when it comes to music, is entirely self-taught. I'm entirely self-taught. I took some drum lessons really to look at the physicality and stop injuring myself when I was around about 45. But apart from that, I've never had any other sort of music tuition. So it was strange at an early age of around about 24 that I found myself in front of a classroom of aspiring rock musicians teaching music. I then carried on doing that for decades, although around about the age of 30, I jumped ship and actually jumped into the real world of music. And I earned my living by hitting the drums, by playing on sessions, but much more by going out and gigging. And I had about 10 years where I would say I was a full professional musician, earning my living by playing the drums. When I got married and my kids came along, I then went back into teaching. And being an older man with a lot more experience, I ended up taking on a lot more of the running of courses, organisation of courses. It just naturally happened. I was no longer the young lecturer with a whole bunch of guys above me that I looked up to. I was now the old guy with a load of younger music teachers looking up to me. And that went on until about 4 or 5 years ago, where a sort of slow cultural creep towards a different way of valuing art and music created an atmosphere and sort of managerial control over what I did, which was unable for me to carry on. The world had changed. Andy, you were old, and what you had to say about music, nobody needed anymore. You were wrong. What you were saying was wrong. That became the overarching message from the educational people who ran my course. Often people who, well, not say often, always people who knew nothing about music and knew nothing about our business. But it wasn't about music really, was it? Education was about, creating wholesome, nice kids that would be obedient and go into the workplace. And of course, that's probably what you need when you're teaching an accountant, or a lawyer or solicitor or even a plumber. But I was teaching musicians and I felt that they needed to be unruly and they needed to be unkempt for them to be able to operate in my world, which was slightly different because, of course, that world had changed as well. So one day I found myself washed up on the beach of obscurity and no, it wasn't the beach of obscurity because I'd done some stuff and people knew where I was. It wasn't the beach of obscurity, was it? What beach did you get washed up on? The beach of being a waste of space. Not needed. I popped off the end of the needed thing into a world of being just an old bloke that nobody wanted to hear anymore. Now, if this YouTube channel hadn't come along, what would I have done? I don't know. But I'm quite aware that 30 years teaching had created a way of delivery and things I wanted to say and things I taught to the kids that now seemed applicable to the much older audience that came here. And so for me, this feels like it always has done. I've got up in the morning, I've gone to this place here, I've sat down and I'm chatting. Except this time I've got no one to interact with. I'm imagining the audience in front of me, but they're much older than the kids that I used to teach. But in the end, it's the same thing. I would go in and chat to the kids, find out what they're interested in, find out what they needed to know or what they wanted to know, what was troubling them. And of course, these kids wanted to be creative musicians. They wanted to work in the industry, I think. Or did they? I don't know. But by talking to them and interacting with them, I developed some truths that I could throw at them. And these would hit home and they would help them. Sometimes it wouldn't help them there and then. Sometimes they'd message me 5 years later and they said, that thing you said in the class actually, I now am in a situation where it applied and I remember what you said. So I don't want to be the one here, if you know my history and what I've done, of going, I think that music colleges have killed music. But that idea popped into my head this morning. I saw something online and I thought, my God, are music colleges just killing music? Last week I talked about the government's plan for music that they're just about to publish and some of the thoughts that Tom Watson, who has been the head of UK music, has put forth, and I didn't agree with any of it. And I said my thing mainly because I was bitter and I knew I'd got my audience here where I could say my opinions, but the establishment aren't interested in what I've got to say. It's only you lot that are interested in what I've got to say. I am washed up on the beach of some sort of an obscurity when it comes to the establishment. Right? So, am I bitter and angry, annoyed? Well, yes, I am. I value education. I think it's important. I've spent my whole life involved in music education, so I have to think it's important. But is it? It's Philosophy Sunday. Maybe I should really have a good think and, ask myself the painful question. Maybe you were wasting your time for that 30 years teaching. It was a waste of time. Have you ever asked yourself that, Andy? It was just money for old rope. The kids turned up. They had a couple of years not having to deal with life. They could play their guitars. They all enjoyed it. You got paid. But in the end, is that where taxpayers should be putting their money? Should the millions that are going into music education really be going in there just to spend, money on kids so they can play some Metallica covers? And should they really even get a qualification for doing so? Those out there have done proper jobs are probably thinking, this doesn't seem fair, right, to do a proper bloody course. And it was boring and horrible, but I passed it. And now I've got a job that's boring and horrible. And, why should people be going out and doing what they want and enjoying themselves? See, these are all the questions that lurk in the back of every single music lecturer's mind. Now, when this video started, there was a little montage, wasn't there? We had a little bit of School of Rock. School of Rock is like the Dead Poets Society for rock music lecturers, That's what we all aspire to be like Jack Black at the front of the class, imparting how bloody amazing AC/DC are to a bunch of kids that would rather be listening to some modern thing that they don't like. Let's force our taste on these kids and then they'll be better. They'll all start playing some, and all the parents will, in the end, see how wonderful it is. Because the vindication in School of Rock is the parents, isn't it? Right? He's never got that sort of being a rock and roller and being on the outside of society. He's like a grown-up baby, isn't he, Jack Black? And in the end, all the parents, all the establishment, all the people that have, snucked their noses or whatever the saying is at Mr. Black, finally come round and realise what he's done is worthwhile because he's enforced a load of bloody classic rock on a bunch of kids that would rather be listening to something that's got a drum machine and a sampler on it and somebody rapping away and swearing and with girls in the background wiggling their bottoms, all that modern stuff that we all hate. Because it's all shit, isn't it? And the only good stuff really is stuff made by blokes in the early 70s with real guitars, right? Do we really want to be paying taxpayers' money to enforce that idea on our kids? Oh, you see. I also had a video from some college in London. It was a bloody master's course as well. And that was there to really show you the shite that these colleges can put out. That there they are telling you that they're going to teach you about the music business and performance and how to market yourself. And they create one of the most cringeworthy, awful, badly shot, badly conceived adverts in the history of mankind. Why? Because the powers that be in their lecturers, you know what they say? If you can't teach, if you can't do it, then teach. What's the saying? And that joke's like Jack Black cracks that joke in School of Rock, doesn't he? But don't get put off by that, Oh yes, I mean, I have to be honest. Being an unschooled person myself, right? I did do a master's degree qualification in education, and the academic part I passed really well. I failed on the practical stuff, and then it was around about that time when I was getting offers to go into the real world. So I left and joined Robert Plant, and I thought I don't need to look back. I never got that qualification. And that hampered me because as time went on, it became more and more important to have a qualification in education, especially a master's level one. When I was feeling like I was going under and nobody wanted me anymore, I went and applied for a job lecturing at Bath University. Now, 10, 15 years before, Goldsmiths had come to me and said, we want you to come and work here, Andy. We need someone with practical experience, has done the real thing, and we need someone in here who knows that and knows about rock music. And they sort of offered me a job, and I couldn't do it because it was having to get down to London every week, and I couldn't make that work. But that was 10, 15 years ago. About 5 or 6 years ago, you know, I contacted Bath University. I sent my CV down. The guy actually rang me up and said, we need someone like you here. So I sent my application form, and then it was immediately blocked because I hadn't got a master's degree. I also applied for a job at another university and was turned down because there was no academic stuff there. And I thought, well, stuff them. That's what I thought. You see? So yes, I've got bloody yards and yards of bitterness to drive me through this video. So it'd be nice here, now that I've got my YouTube channel, I'm out of all that, you know. And maybe I wake up in the morning feeling extremely angry about the way I was treated. You know, that's probably the case. You know, but... and why do I say this now? Because I know that there will be people my age that have also been ousted for education for exactly the same reasons. I'm guessing there'll be more out there that ended up being thrown onto the scrap heap like I did, right? And not just thrown onto the scrap heap, driven onto the scrap heap by organisations who know how to manufacture in you a full-on nervous breakdown and break your health. That's how the education systems work. Do I think education systems are corrupt? Absolutely yes. I can say it now. What are they going to do? Sue me? Well, sue me. Take me. I'll tell the truth. Yes, they're corrupt. Lecturers fake marks. They have their favourites. You know, they are under a system which is demanding a certain row of numbers, 92% pass rate, 92% attendance. We've got to have this, this and this. You know, so when you put that framework on people, especially rock musicians who are now, you know, fluked a job in education, what are they going to do? They're going to start faking it. And that was exacerbated by COVID, wasn't it? Because in COVID, we just gave qualifications away. Right, we gave qualifications to kids, and you were allowed to. The establishment said that all you had to do was go, what do you think that person was worth? You know, did they pass? Would they have got a distinction? Yeah, well, I quite liked them, and they never badmouthed me. And they were compliant, so yeah, give them a distinction. No work, nothing. So yeah, it's a pile of shite. Okay, I'm hoping all the music teachers are out there. There'll be loads, you know, that you'll have the guts to chime in. You know, because those who are in education, we go, no, what's Andy saying now? Why is he saying all this contentious stuff? This isn't even contentious, right? So part of it is I also think that the education system is shot. I think the education system in my country, at least in the UK, is not fit for purpose, and it doesn't educate. What it does is try and create compliance in these kids. And compliance is the last thing you want to put in to creative musicians if you value creativity. If you want to produce well-trained automatons that won't get on anybody's nerves, then you can do that. Now, you could say, if we look to the overarching Platonic model of music education, which is the classical music education system, upon which everything is sort of based, you could say that that system is there because it's producing mindless automatons who will just do what the music's required and what the conductor's required. Because in classical musician, you need a high skill level. People have to read and basically sit there, staring at a piece of paper, churning the notes out. Now, yeah, they put their feeling in and their expression in, and they can do all that. But that is tempered by the bloke out front who's going, yeah, that's like a bit too much expression. Sorry, let's hold it back a bit. You know, when you put that blue note in, you know, you've been listening to a bit of B.B. King at the weekend, you're going to stop that, please, you know. But I need to be able to predict what you sound like, to be able to, you know, sit at the helm of this thing and do, you know, bloody Mozart some justice. You know, we've got to think what Mozart wanted. So the whole classical music education system was about teaching these sorts of skills. Now, really, are those skills what people in pop music, rock music, jazz, whatever you want to call it, are those the skills that you need? I'm going to be dealing with this on this video, but there's a lot to get through. I'm trying to get through it as fast and as entertaining as I possibly can. So here I am, you know, on a roller coaster ride through music education, taking pot shots at all of it, right? And I've admitted to the bitterness which motivates me to do that. Those bastards got rid of me. 30 years, man and boy, I'd put into the education system, and you saw me doing it. You saw me, little bit younger, longer hair. You saw the video up in front of the kids, you know. There's about 100 kids in that room with me. Successful music course, making the college tons of money. Kids up on stage enjoying themselves. Kids up on stage being expressive, playing on a proper stage with lights. And there I am, thanking bloody all my people, you know, bloody sending the love out, you know. Not to mention in that room with the kids, I had 2 bloody music legends, Richard March from Pop Will Eat Yourself, and the lead singer of Ned's Atomic Dust, and John Penny. There they were, we'd got them in, working with the kids. What's it like to sell 1,000,000 records? Oh, well, I can tell you what that's like because I did it, right? You know, people who actually had done it. Bloody hell, I'm proud of what I did. I am proud of what it did. And what did the powers that be do? They came along and they bloody got rid of me. Why? Well, can I say? Maybe I was just too mouthy. Maybe, rather than exhibiting the sort of compliance that they wanted in the kids, they wanted me doing what they wanted to do. Because the truth is, the cultural climate in the 90s, when I came in, was a lot more exciting and a lot more creative, and it was based upon the idea that this is what we want at the end, now you go away and do it. So I was writing courses in the 90s. Nobody asked me to write courses after 2010, but we were writing courses. Now the college I taught at sort of invented that mid-level, which is known as level 3, music education, which is between the schools and the universities. And in laying the groundwork for that, it opened up the idea of rock music education. This is something that I may have mentioned elsewhere, but I'm going to say it now. It wasn't me. I was a kid at the time, but these guys that were my mentors, people like Kevin Gammon that will appear every now and then in the back of this video and hasn't appeared for a while because I'm afraid he's not well again. So I send my love, you know, and I ask the universe to keep their eye on Mr. Gammond, who is my mentor. These guys had an idea which they took from performing arts. You know, they looked at the way acting theatre is taught, and they realised that that wasn't teaching how to read or music theory or, you know, how to interpret the composition on the page or do what a conductor said. No, it was about somebody looking at the story of what they're doing, creating a character and going out and delivering it. And a guy called David Gaulk-Roger, who was the originator of the course I taught on, was a bloody genius that realised he could adapt that. He understood that rock music was not about technical precision, it was about the story. And in that, they took that framework and realised that they could just keep the acting theatre criteria and stuff and just apply it to the rock concert. And in that, the course I started on invented rock music teaching. Now, this goes up against another way of teaching music, which has come from the sort of Berkeley jazz method. Let's just explain that one a little bit. Jazz developed, and we've discussed it in great detail on this channel, who developed it and how it came about. But there's no two ways about it. Jazz came out of different cultures coming together. So it's negotiated. There's no rules to jazz. You know, jazz isn't like classical music. It's new form comes out and it goes, yeah, bring whatever you want, bring whatever you want. And jazz has been able to assimilate whatever is around it, put it into this sort of nuclear reactor and pop out with new forms of music, which it starts doing at the turn of the century. And this stuff originally is anarchistic, it's archaic, it is punk to the classical idea of music where everything is predictable. Jazz isn't predictable. You can come out and go, you know, or you can go, or you can go, you could have whatever voice you want in jazz. And that's how jazz starts. And within that, geniuses come in. Now, genius is a problem. When I was back doing my degree in art, I can remember my lecturer came round and I said to him, what would you do if you had a genius on this course? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, say if you had Picasso came on this course, but the equivalent now. Right, Picasso's breaking all the rules. How are you going to accommodate for someone who is supremely creative? And the lecturer went, like that, and I could see there was no answer to this. He gave me a cod answer about hopefully, you know, because they know what they're talking about, they would be able to spot this. But the truth is, in 1920s, when America was trying to create a culture out of the non-culture that it found itself residing within, we haven't got a culture. We've got no bloody old buildings. We've got no poets. We've got no bloody Shakespeare. We've got no painters. We better bloody work quick. You know, where's Aaron Copland when you need him? You know, write some stuff about bloody American stuff, and that then we've got our bloody American culture. So in the 1920s, they're looking around like that, and they're looking to Aaron Copland to solve the dearth of non-culture, which makes up American culture. And basically, American culture is a culture of non-culture, right? That is why I will not let any highfalutin idea creep in to the development of blues and jazz. Now, this comes from bloody everybody. It comes from the street. It comes from minstrelsy. It comes from dirty jokes. It comes from silly dances that make you laugh, comedy. It's all coming at the lowest and the low. It's non-culture. America is great because it took its non-culture and forced it on the rest of the world. You may have your wonderful cultures, we may have none, but we can override that just by pushing Coca-Cola and John Wayne at you, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In that, geniuses come in. I wonder if I could do this in this. I wonder if I could do this in this. And you see. Now in America, this is something I've never been able to really explain on my channel properly. The reason why I deny the Black Genesis, and sorry to get onto this subject, but I think it applies here because I'm really trying to get across the idea of where newness and creativity comes from, especially in the realm of jazz, rock, funk, whatever, soul, popular music, whatever you want to call it. The genius that emerges, black genius, doesn't really emerge in jazz to the 1920s. And that's combined with a new type of seeing culture, which is able, and this comes out of the Harlem Renaissance and to some extent European culture, the old culture turning around and going, America, I don't think you've realised, but these guys, this is your classical music, it's Louis Armstrong. Have you not noticed this? So that happens in the 1920s, and the geniuses that exist, the black geniuses that exist in jazz at that time, they're there because the idea that they would be geniuses in the classical realm, well, A, this is a new type of genius, so their genius is different, but also B, they wouldn't have been allowed in anyway. To explain how that genius emerges, you have to explain the fact that it wasn't there before and where this came from. This is why jazz will let anything in. This is why it's the great democratic music, because you could just come in and throw whatever you want into there. And this allows anybody to come in and show their genius. Right? Now, by the time we get to the 1940s, jazz has decided to narrow itself down to bebop, which is now the sophisticated version of jazz, which it can now compete alongside Stravinsky and Ravel and all the bloody stuff that is known to be good. And all the other stuff, the more important stuff that it created in terms of Western culture, gets shuffled off elsewhere. But I believe that, you know, rock and roll and rhythm and blues and country music, all these things are either touched by jazz or are jazz. And so right up to the 1960s, there's no education system for jazz. What there are is geniuses coming in, and through the democratic process that exists within jazz, they go, well, I could do this. The speed with which it happens is frightening. Louis Armstrong, 1926, really brings a level of virtuosity. He says, this is what can be done in the music. By 1933, a mere 7 years later, we have Art Tatum recording those solo piano pieces, which are the most virtuoso, sophisticated music ever created in the 20th century. Music that classical types would listen to and go, well, that's not actually possible. But we also had people like Django Reinhardt, we had people like Stefano Grappelli, then we had people like Coleman Hawkins and Charlie Parker, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane. You know, then we had people like John McLaughlin, Alan Holdsworth. We got people like Billy Cobham, all coming in and taking the music and applying a sophistication, but a sort of sophistication that had never been seen before. The academics really get to jazz by the 1950s, but back then it's not education, because the education they're going to teach this. The system isn't ready even to consider teaching jazz. But I think George Russell comes out with one of the first sort of academic approaches to jazz theory. Now, his Lydian chromatic method is not taught at all now. And his method is actually, I believe, as political as it is theoretical. It posits something about jazz that jazz is trying to do. And this influences the musicians around them. And it's interesting that Miles Davis's then move to modality, or Coltrane's move to the Coltrane matrix, is an attempt to not show the world how this exists within jazz, but to bust it apart. Now, classical music is based upon a system which is a harmonic system of diatonic harmony. So you have a scale, C major scale. C major scale contains 7 chords, you know, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. Those chords can be extended, and where the notes work, they then create cadences. So, you know, you've got the basic, 5-to-1 cadence, the G to C cadence, which is a cadence that feels like it's falling downwards, and you've got the sort of Amen sort of plagal cadence of the 4-to-1, which sounds like it's moving upwards. Coltrane's matrix is actually an attempt to do both at the same time, right? To go upwards and downwards. Ornette Coleman, however, is really developing a way of playing jazz which is much more based upon the ideas of Buckminster Fuller, which is, rather than thinking of up and down and having a foundation and building things up, he's talking about seeing yourself at the centre and playing out. Coltrane's trying to do the same thing. So the theory that emerges at the end of the 1950s is about freedom. It's trying to break the rules, not make the rules. It's trying to codify what jazz does. And in that way, it apes the 12-tone method in classical music, which is also trying to, in simpler terms, just break the rules of harmony. Why? Because the rules of harmony act like the god of all rules. Ornette Coleman, who I think is the last great genius of jazz, right? And you will learn stuff by studying Ornette Coleman, but it's an intellectual process, okay? Because harmony has become music theory. The idea, this Platonic idea of perfectionism that comes from Pythagoras, that by studying harmony, we're going to unearth the sort of secret workings of the world, has made harmony in people's mind magical. So suddenly jazz becomes about harmony. Andy, can we do some jazz? Why do you want to do jazz? Well, because I want to learn all those scales. Well, those scales don't come from jazz. Where do they come from? Well, classical music, really. Do they? Yeah. What about all them fancy chords, them jazz chords? They're not jazz chords. They come from classical music. Go and listen to some Debussy. That's where the jazz guys got it. But what's jazz about? It's nothing to do with that. It's about other stuff. So why is it when you get a jazz course, they're always talking about the chords and the harmony and say, you know, you got these special scales like super Locrian natural 4 scale and, you know, all the altered scale. They're the same scale. What's all that about? And, you know, what am I supposed to say to them? Well, because in Western culture, we value the logos. We value the literal embodiment of truth or quality. And so we value harmony over rhythm, over timbre, over dynamics, over intention, right? Ornette Coleman and Coltrane, they're thinking about intention. Why? Well, in Coltrane's case, because he wants to ascend. And Ornette Coleman wants to as well. What do you mean he wants to ascend? Why didn't they teach that at Berkeley? I went to Berkeley. They never talked about ascending, except ascending through a diatonic scale, because that is the system that Berkeley brought in. Counter to what was going on in jazz at the time in the 1950s, Berkeley brought in the chord scale and actually turns it round. He goes, you've got a D minor. Oh, so D minor, you can build a scale upon that. You could build up the D minor scale, the D Aeolian, but you could also have the D Dorian if you wanted. You could play both those scales, and then when you put those scales on top of each other, you start to realise that you've got a major 6 or a flat 6. Now you can put both of those together like Barry Harris and start to come up with this stuff. All that's really good. And what will it sound like when you do that, Andy? What will it sound like if I do this Barry Harris thing and stick all these on top of each other? It will sound like a cliche. What do you mean? Well, the only reason why you need harmonic knowledge is if you want to sound like something else. Because you yourself could go over to the piano and you could just press down 4 notes, listen to them, and you can say, I like that. I'm going to go with that. Or, yeah, I don't like that. What do you mean? Because it's your taste that dictates popular music, that dictates jazz, that dictates blues. You decide. If you decide and it's your decision, then education goes out the window unless it can accommodate for that. But it never could. Now, I've got to be honest, in the 1960s, 70s, Berkeley was so all over the place. This was not consolidated. You also had, by the 70s, you know, new kids coming up. They would also listen to the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin. So they came in by the 1980s. You've got to sort of get this rock guitar crossover where there's people like Scott Henderson out there playing like bloody Steve Ray Vaughan or Richie Blackmore, but also they got all this vocabulary, and people's like, oh, where's all this vocabulary coming from? Oh, he went to music college. Yeah, let's stop Joe Pass. I spoke to Scott Henderson about this. What did Joe Pass teach you? Yeah, I don't know. We used to just chat. I was chatting to a mate of mine who was taught by Joe Morello. What do you get from Joe Morello? I know it's good stuff, but we should just chat. Nothing wrong in chatting. There's nothing wrong in chatting. Now the powers that be going to say, let's put money into a course, and what will the teachers do? Yeah, just do a bit of chatting. That's what I'm doing now. I'm just chatting. You're going to get an hour of chatting here. All right? I don't know where I'm going with this. I've got no plan. I'm like the jazz musician. I'm riffing on this. I'm like moving through the history of education. So we have, if we back up and I get myself back on track, we have this idea of rock education. It's like a story. It's like theatre. I was involved in the creation of that back in the early 90s, right, in my country. That creates the framework here, right? Rock music education. On the other side, you've got this jazz education, the Berkeley idea, the idea you're going to teach harmony to kids. Right, basically. You're going to teach classical harmony to kids, but trying to get them to utilise it to, create a vocabulary. I've always been against this. Now, it could be the fact that, you know, as a drummer, I've got reasonable vocabulary. I don't know why. The way things panned out for me as a drummer, it was much easier for me to just assimilate the normal stuff. As a guitar player, I always found it really difficult to do that. And as a teacher, I could tell you what I lacked as a guitar player. My journey into music as a guitarist meant that I didn't know the notes on the neck, for example, and I was never very good at shape recognition on the guitar, which I think is a skill that some people have and some don't. It took me bloody years to be able to get a shape position on, and then teach guitar. I'd have kids in front of me and I'd write a scale and they'd look at it, start playing, and they'd got it much faster than me. But shape recognition on the drums, which to me is like a visual map, because I'm a very visual thinker. I was a painter originally. So when I imagine a piece of music, I imagine it as a map. It's like a picture and a map, and I'm following that through. So numbers and time, I picture. I've had this since I was a little kid, and it's very specific. The numbers have almost like colours and shading. We are all like this inside our heads, is that we have things that make us good at certain things and not good at something else. But my drive to pick up and play the guitar, I play every single day, and so I developed my ability to play what I could hear, which I do think is fundamentally what every improvising musician should have. But I know that's not valued so much in the education. They'll say it is, of course. But if you take another product of the Berkeley system, Danny Rabin, who is doing very well for himself, coming out with these sort of very pointed, opinionated videos on guitar education. And I love Danny, and he actually got in touch way before his channel blew up. And I do enjoy his videos, but I have to say I disagree with him. I would love to have him on here, and I know he would come on here and talk about this. And he's very thick-skinned, Danny is. That's what I love about him. You can say what you want, he does not care, and I respect that. That's his great skill. He does not care. Right? Say what you want. He's actually a very well-balanced musician that does not need people kissing his arse to keep him up and going. He seems to be a lot more grounded. That I find very interesting about him. I'm not like that. I'm much more fragile. I get much more upset when I get criticised. He just laughs and brushes it off. So with that in mind, I will say what I think. Danny is one of those musicians that will listen to you and go, "Oh, man, that sounds shit. Listen to what you're doing. It sounds shit. You could dress it up as much as you like with all your creative talk, but in the end, those notes are bad. They're shit. You haven't done the work. If you haven't done the work and you can't do this, then you shouldn't be doing it." Now, I disagree on this and on every single level. You can do whatever you bloody want. You can play whatever you want. You know, I would rather listen to someone playing through all the things you are and sticking in a whole bunch of stuff that's shite than listen to another solo over all the things you are. If I've got the choice now, I want to listen to the bad one. Right? Because it's boring. It's cliched. Jazz has become a bunch of cliches, and basically learning stuff that sounds like jazz and then judging it because it sounds like jazz, right? Okay, now it's like, I've seen this apply to me, I've seen it apply to other musicians, you know. People will sit on forums, they don't know I'm looking. "Oh, did you see Andy playing the guitar the other day?" I know, there was a number of bum notes, bad note choice. Well, he obviously doesn't know what he's doing, does he? And he doesn't swing. Well, I know, because he economy picks, doesn't he? And you just cannot play jazz if you economy pick. You have to alternate pick if it doesn't swing. Oh yes, swing. I know we talk about the chord scale process and these notes, and I believe that note is right. I've seen musicians like it. I feel like punching them. You know, when you're in a rehearsal room with a band and you say, "Why don't we go to this chord then? Now, just go to this chord." And then the singer goes, or the keyboardist or something goes, "So what note are you singing?" "Oh, well, it's I'm singing a D at that moment." "And you're suggesting we go to C minor, Andy?" "Yeah." So the D will be making that chord into a C minor 9. "Yeah." "Oh, yeah, well. Like, what are you on about? What are you on about? Why are you justifying it with some chord scale method? Listen to it. Do you like it or don't you like it? Remember what jazz is. Chick Corea, he did a bloody bunch just before he died. He did some incredible educational stuff for free on his Facebook. So he's there how do you create a solo? He sat at the piano. He goes, well, say you play this, and then he plays something. He said, you ask yourself, do I like that? Yeah, I like it. Well, that's good. Then play it. And this also goes to the story that Frank Gambale said, that he done this amazing guitar solo and he cocked up the last note of the solo. So he goes into Chick, who's produced it. Chick, can I just drop in and get that note right at the end? No. Really, Chick, why? Well, why did you play it if you didn't like it? Own it. And I kept the bum note in, that was it. Tough. Good on Chick. And Chick's mindset, when you hear him play, the thing that impresses you about Chick's career, he is always in control of what he's playing. His ability to play what's in his head is at such an incredible level that the jazz educationists should be taking this on board. But here I am, I could talk for hours on jazz education, but we have something far more important. This idea of rock education and jazz education, they don't quite go together. The kids don't want to know it. They will improve, but they will improve by taking on jazz education in that they will be better at playing jazz type things. Now that might make them more employable because they could probably read a chord chart. They'll know more styles of music. They might get a better sense of groove. All those things will help them work. Right? Now, is work what education is about? I used to think it was. I used to justify what we taught by saying, yeah, it doesn't matter what we say. These are the skills they're going to need to work. And the kids would go, well, no, because I'm going to join a metal band. And I go, yes, well, I just taught a guy at the weekend and he was auditioning for a metal band. And he walked in, all the tattoos and bloody piercings, he's got the lot, but he'd also got it all charted out and his chops are ridiculous. Well, what do you mean? Well, there's going to be a cattle call for this band, right? They're going to pick the best one. So it raises up the thing, well, that's what it's like. Is that what it's like in rock music? Can they actually really play then? They just can't, they just play anything and just get away. Kids want it to be that. And that's an aspect of rock and roll. That's the punk aspects, right? But a punk band, think about it. Public Image Limited came out of the Sex Pistols. John Lydon's in the Sex Pistols, and then he goes to Public Image Limited. And Jar Wobble is an upgrade from Sid Vicious, isn't he, as a bass player? By the time you get to 1986 and he's really has learnt his craft, who's he got playing on his albums? Tony Williams, Ginger Baker, Steve Vai, Jonas Hellborg, jazz virtuosos, even the punk guys. They will all go to those players. If you want to work, you have to have those skills. So surely this is what justifies that type of education. No, because, and it took me a long time to realise this, education is not about teaching the skills to get a job. Education is about passing on the knowledge for the next generation. If you wanted to be a great professional drummer who could do the job, take any drummer, 16, 17-year-old, as long as they can hold a rock beat down and got some fills, right? And stick them in a band and put them out on tour. Give them a nice, lovely new drum kit. Have a tech to tune it for them. Give them the headphones, get them playing to a click. So they're now going to be playing in time whatever they want, right? And then take them out on tour. They'll struggle and they will either fail or survive. If they survive, 2 years later, that guy will be employable. It's the industry that teaches employability, not music colleges. Music colleges are there to teach about the beauty of music and all the intricacies that are involved in that. So the next generation understand that. You pass on your knowledge to the next generation. Doesn't matter whether that knowledge gets you a job or not. That should not be the judgment. When we tell kids about, the Battle of Hastings, it's not because we expect them to get a job, running up the bloody beaches in southern England and then taking on, who was it? Henry whatever it is with the arrow in the eye. Shows how much I remember from that lesson. Harold. King Harold. King Harold, wasn't it? You pesky French coming over to take my country? No, you won't. Oh, bloody hell, right in the eye. So, I ain't going to get a job in that, am I? invaded England in the bloody early part of this, the 10th century or whenever it was. You put yourself off now, haven't you, Andy, with that thought? No, we don't teach these things because you get a job in it. We don't teach Shakespeare. We don't teach quantum theory because you'll get a job in it. We teach it because that knowledge has to be passed on. That's what education really should be about. So what are you passing on with music education? The arts, I believe, after a whole lifetime doing it, are about beauty. They're not about truth, and it's about negotiating beauty. So when you teach the arts, what you do, if you are not a postmodernist and if you have not succumbed to the 20th century view of things, because postmodernism has destroyed our arts education in the West, destroyed it completely. All right? And what happens when you destroy something is the educationists look around and go, what can we put in the place of that thing? Once you get rid of the idea of truth and beauty, once that becomes all relative, there's no idea of greatness. Greatness is just something that you have, that you express yourself because you need to, because you're compelled to. And then people might come along and they might recognise your greatness, but really, when they recognise your greatness, there's no real greatness there, because greatness is just, in the end, a sort of... it's the power dynamic, as Foucault put out there. Foucault, the most cited philosopher in the arts in history. The guy that said there's no truth, only power. So this idea, this power hierarchy, comes into the arts. My daughter's been doing a degree in art, fine art. Every essay is about power dynamics. We are not teaching art, beauty, and the appreciation of beauty. I think the academic subjects should teach a respect for truth and appreciation of beauty. It does none of those things. And I think the more the opposite of those ideas embedded themselves into the establishment and got into the minds of the management, who did not have the intellectual capabilities to even understand the concepts that they were putting on you, fed by, quangos, government quangos were putting, has to be done, you have to do this. So yes, this is why I rail against identity politics, because it stands in opposition to beauty and creativity. It's totalitarian, and it is always telling people what they should think, they should feel, and what beauty is, and doesn't allow that negotiation that we saw in the history of early jazz, that we saw in rock and roll. And then the other thing that happens in education is the same way as jazz. It goes, well, let's just teach the harmony, because that is like this framework that comes from Pythagoras. Even though we don't realise it anymore, we have no idea of the music of the spheres and how that comes down through the history of music, and how by the time of the classical period, you've got the magic flute, Mozart, which is the embodiment of these esoteric ideas in the story of classical music. That this stuff is embodied in Western culture, and that's why you value it. Jazz came along and breaks that up. It's something else. But you now want to put it all back in. And those of you who think that rock music's a story, right, and it's theatre, that thing we embedded, that we discussed is embedded into rock music, which I think is great, by the way. Now, let's replace that with a couple of things. Music technology, so we can teach things like how compressors work and what MIDI does, and music business. Now, the music business thing is interesting because to understand how music works, there's intuitive aspects and there's counterintuitive aspects. Most musicians, when put in, the situation of doing it, their intuition will teach them. I'm one of those musicians. I learned to drum and I could play professionally, and everything I learned, I worked out myself through intuition. But what I couldn't work out was the way the industry works. And what the industry is how you make money out of it. All right? And that starts with a negotiation. Do you want to make money out of this? If you do, by getting paid, you will be getting paid for an aspect of creativity and music making which is coming from an establishment, i.e. your creativity is not what they're interested in. If you happen that your creativity when you were like 20 years old, 21 years old, happens to line up with the zeitgeist, you could find yourself in a hit band. And you won't require any chops and technique, and kids will look at you and go, well, he's got no chops, so I don't need any chops, not understanding that what you got you there was that your innate intuitive creativity chimed with the zeitgeist at that point. The only problem is that 20 years later, when you've got older and you still have that creative impetus, unless the zeitgeist has moved with you, and it does happen with some people, like Elton John, he had a long period, you know, people like Paul McCartney have been able to maintain that. So even though his latest album is not Revolver, he still has something to say to people out there. It's quite fascinating. But for other people, it's like a flash in the pan. And you're lucky to be a flash in the pan. So here we move to the great point of this, you know, as we get into the last 5 minutes, as we've established that sometimes that these things that are being taught are basically, it's been put there to have something to teach. And the music industry one is the one that I think is interesting because it's that aspect which is counterintuitive. Music and creativity is all intuitive. Knowing how to make money out of it is counterintuitive. I read comments on my bloody videos all day long from people who have never made any money out of music, saying what music is and how it works and what creativity is. How does creativity link to making money? Well, the problem is that the old system was like a pyramid with a tiny amount of people at the top, and you had to try and get into that pyramid. It was virtually impossible. Below that peak of the pyramid was a whole bunch of jobs where you could just about put food in your mouth, whereas it like music teacher, played in covers bands, and that was it. And that's what I started off teaching. The internet has changed that, and the idea that you have older people in education who at best only know about the old way of doing things, teaching how you got a record deal in 1987 to a bunch of kids that they think they can apply that to the internet when they have no understanding of it, is why our education system is not fit for purpose. Now, as I come to the end of this video, I'm in the last 5 minutes, I have just got to the doorway of why I think music education is killing music. I think that it wasn't there. If you take rock music, it wasn't there in the 60s or the 70s or the 1980s. It emerged, rock music education. Forget jazz music education, that didn't emerge until the 1960s, and you can see the journey of that. But if you took a look at rock music education, it doesn't start until the 90s. I was involved in the start of that, very proud of that, although I wasn't one of the genius people coming up with that, but I saw it at first hand. Okay? As that carried on, I think there was a period of chaos where the education back in the 90s was so all over the place and badly thought out and not tracked that it allowed a space for a conversation to happen. If you have this, where you have the lecturer, so I'm the lecturer and in front of me is a student, this is in reality what's going on. Right, we're both musicians. I will prove to you that we both come from the same place. We are linked by the fact we're creative musicians. I talk about it to you, you recognise it. You're shocked by it. Oh my God, someone else thinks like me because you've never come across it before. So there is now a bond. Right? There might be some respects. Usually musicians respect you because you can play. Another thing that's gone out the bloody window with music education. So you can play. And they look at you and go, oh God, he can really play. That creates respect. In itself, it means nothing, but it does create respect in the student. So the student respects you and sees a bond with you. And then you turn around and you say this, look, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. I need to learn who you are and what you want. And then I'm just down the bloody road a little bit. So it's a bit like you shouting to me, he's down the road and goes, what's round the corner? Well, I'm having a look and I think it's this thing called the internet. Well, how's that going to work? I mean, really into the internet I am. I know, but for musicians, it looks like you make your money through advertising linked to your product. Oh, that sounds really good. Does that mean anybody could access that? I think so, but the trouble is, there's a lot of people trying to bloody do it. But if you're putting music up, because it only lasts for like 3 or 4 minutes, there's not enough time for you to generate the money. It seems that long form content is where the money's at. Really? Can you see that? Yeah, I'm telling you that now. Right? It's not bloody rocket science. That's what I've learned in the last 5 years. Do with it what you will. But at the moment, our music education system is not fit for purposes. I've done other videos about it. If you enjoyed this one and you now want me to go in and really look based upon everything I explained to you, because this really is the history of music education from Andy's point of view. That's what this video is. Right? I hope I've entertained you going through that story, and I hope we've arrived at quite a simple thing at the end of it, which is, it is killing music. Why? Because nobody understands it at the moment. We're back in the Wild West. The internet, we're back in the Wild West. The academy will always be hamstrung in the arts by sort of platonic ideas of perfection, right? Which in the last 50 years case has been identity politics. That becomes the overarching ideology that can't be questioned. That strangles the arts. In that place, you replace the idea of talking about beauty with things that are allied to that, whether it's music theory, whether it's music business or music technology. Those things come in. The kids can pass that without having to be great musicians. It doesn't create great musicians, it doesn't teach creativity, and it doesn't explain the counterintuitive aspects, because those are esoteric and only a few people will know. How do you have teachers that know that? You allow them to go, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just a bloke further on down the road. That's all I want to be. That's all I am. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, put a like on it. Please stick some money in the old PayPal tip jar. I am struggling at the moment. Took a week off. I'm back. I'm struggling. So if you want me to be here, you know, any support is welcome, even if it's just liking and sticking a comment on. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video.